I'm Timothy Aaron Rush. I'm a professional counselor. This is Ananda Nelson. Ananda, what do you do?
Licensed clinical social worker.
And this is just a chance for us to have more of an informal conversation about NET, Neuro Emotional Technique, how it's impacted us, how we use it, how we met, and how NET is the vehicle through which we met. And so we're just going to do that.
I love it.
So just talk a little bit about how you came to NET and what it means to you, and let's just
Mm.
kick it off.
Well, so I was 13 years old
Mm.
when I was introduced to NET, and I was having chronic low back pain, like couldn't move, like couldn't bend over. I was a competitive gymnast, and my mom was like, there's no reason for you to be experiencing this much pain at this age. Like, that's not normal. So it was acupuncture combined with neuroemotional technique that totally changed my life. I'll never forget the first emotion that I had. And I just cried. It was profoundly deep, unrequited love. And I already
Mm.
knew exactly what it was about. I started crying. She hooks me up, and like, that was it. And I knew that I wanted to do NET when I grew up.
Mhm.
I just didn't know what that path would unfold to be. Would it be acupuncture? Would it be mental health? My mom's a mental health counselor. So I didn't know how the path was going to unfold, but I knew I was going to do this when I grew up. And I thought that muscle testing and everything was so fascinating. I would bring my friends to my treatment sessions because I was like, you have to watch this amazing technique. And everyone was always amazed with it. It was like my party trick.
Mm.
And my mom got certified in NET that same first year when I was 13. So we started doing muscle testing at home. So I was very well exposed. So by the time I went in for certification and for training, I was very well ahead of most of the people that were already there.
Yeah.
But it was groundbreaking for me. Like, I would not be me without it if I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have it. And it's my favorite way to treat. I would say I use it 90% of the time, maybe 80 to 90% of the time, but most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's what I'm known for. People find me, they're like, hey, I heard you do this interesting technique. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you've heard about it?
Mm-hmm.
Come on in.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's do
Yeah.
it. And then I've had the non believers who are committed to not getting anything who get something. And then they're like,
Uh-huh.
okay, I'm a believer now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's great, right? So
yeah.
you say something that caught me right there, that
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't be you without it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I come at it a little bit differently and a lot later in life, but I still feel like I wouldn't be me without it.
Yeah.
So I come at it, I was probably 36 or so
Yeah.
when I was introduced to it. And practitioners from various disciplines use it.
Right.
And I was introduced to it in a really simple form. And like three or four short treatments into it, I start to feel better. And I'm like, man, I'm training to become a therapist. I want to use this and I can. And I think
Yeah.
both of us would agree that in terms of psychotherapy, it's one of, if not the most powerful processing technique we've ever seen.
It
Bar none, really.
bar none. And it's like, to me, and again, I'm biased because I'm so in love with NET, but like, NET's up here,
Hmm.
and any other processing technique, it just scratches the surface.
Right.
It can't
Even the ones that
encapsulate.
try to dig beneath the surface scratch the
Yeah.
surface.
Yeah. I'll have lots of clients that have come in, having already done EMDR, having already done so many of these other processing techniques. And then whatever that they've done a lot of work on shows up in our treatment. And they're like, I thought I worked on this.
Hmm.
I'm like, you may have, but your body still remembers some aspect of it that it's still holding on to that we still need to process.
Hmm.
And they're always blown away
Yeah,
when that comes up.
completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm trained in EMDR and subjective opinion, but
Right.
I think confirmed by some objective reality.
Right.
NET is more effective, less distressing, and just superior.
And very direct.
Very direct.
That's what I love about it is its directness to exactly what you need to clear at that time,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, and I think me saying I wouldn't be me without it, somatic symptoms, stress, anxiety. I ran on a level up here in terms of nervous system activation and internal somatic distress. And I'm not perfect,
Right.
but my stress level, my somatic symptoms, just as a threshold,
Mm-hmm.
has gone from here maybe down to here.
And how powerful is that?
Right. How powerful is a 75%, 80% reduction
Right.
in
Symptoms.
symptoms in day to day life?
Yeah.
Like that's sort of unheard of.
It's very unheard of, and I almost think that some people don't want to believe that that's possible. But I mean, I personally could say that I could attempt to treat anything with this technique. And I mean, if I'm just talking for myself, for whatever issue that I might have, even if it's in money and career and all of these different areas of life, there's nothing that it can't treat for me at least. You know, and again, there's some things that it may treat better or more quickly, but then we also have to consider how ready is the body to process these things, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And it can even get as refined as somebody sends a text message
Oh, yeah.
and it hits me really wrong.
Triggers.
Right. And it's not necessarily what they did or what they
Right.
said, right?
It's what
But
it brings up in you.
yeah, it rings bells, it pulls tripwires from the past
Mm-hmm.
across time, and I just feel horrible in the moment.
Well, even like a song.
A song.
Oh, yeah, a song that can bring you somatically back to that time of darkness or despair.
Mhm.
You know, being able to process through that is huge, to not have the emotional attachment and dysregulation around it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if we consider clients, right, we have to do this in a general sense,
Right.
but we have clients that have gained the same kind of hope and relief as we have.
Yeah.
Somebody might come in and just have a situation or a pattern or a fear that just is debilitating almost. And it's like, what can I do for this? How can I get over this? I've used CBT, I've used exposure, I've used all these things that might help to some degree,
Mm-hmm.
but how can I really get better? How can I really not just cope with the symptoms, which psychotherapy is great about offering coping
Right.
techniques, but how can I really change the situation?
Mm-hmm.
How can I get underneath the symptoms, heal the underlying issues, begin to actually not have to live in the reality and intensity of what this means for me right now? And we
Yeah.
see that all the time.
Every single day to really address the root cause, you know?
How would you explain that?
Oh, I mean, intense fear, any kind of psychosomatic issues, even just physiological issues, you know, the aftermath of a trauma, the physiological symptoms of PTSD that brings,
Right.
being able, again, right, if the intensity of a symptom is maybe an 80 or a 90, to bring it down to a 30 even is huge. Sometimes it goes away completely, but even to reduce it that drastically is very unheard of,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to regulate oneself that much more easily,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And I think we talk in other places in the project about how, and for people out there, somatic just means bodily sensation
Mm-hmm.
related. I think we talk in the project about how it does all kinds of good stuff all at once,
Yes.
right? But
Yes.
literally a technique that can help reframe how somebody thinks, how somebody feels emotionally, and how somebody experiences their body and body sensations all at once,
Mm-hmm.
which is unlike any other technique.
I, to this day, have not found anything else that resembles anything
Mm-hmm.
that this technique offers.
Mm-hmm. So, what are some stories, as much as you can talk about, that you've seen work out in real life?
So many miracles.
Yeah.
I mean, something as simple as someone comes in with an 8 out of 10 headache that goes away completely just in one 50-minute session. That's huge. I've had more specific, you know, right after a traumatic event. Someone comes in, they can't sleep at night, you know, doors are locked, the hyper intensity of paranoia
Mm-hmm.
that maybe in 4 weeks is down from, again, if we're talking 10 out of 10, like 12, like really high,
Like bad, yeah.
down to a 2, down to a 1. When that person comes back to you and says, I can now sleep again at night, like I can now walk around not in that intense paralyzing fear,
Mm-hmm.
those are huge. It's a mix of someone having bodily relief that is also amazing, but then again, the emotional relief of I was going through this heartbreak, I was going through this confusion, to bring them back to that inner sense of peace and stability is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm trying to think of more specific examples that wouldn't give away someone's entire story. But
Right. We can't do that.
yeah.
But yeah, somebody comes in with a traumatic event and a
Mm-hmm.
trauma response and a vastly inhibited life, and it's like, wow, I've improved 70-80%. I can do the things that I
Mm-hmm.
used to not be able to do, and now I want to work on this. And And then sometimes when we experience it or when people experience it in one area of life,
Mm-hmm.
it just sort of expands. Like I see what this can do.
Yeah.
I think one thing we didn't get to in the other videos is this idea of crafting your life with NET,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
especially with statements, like
Right.
I can sort of engineer whatever I want in
Mm-hmm.
terms
To
of
get congruent with those
how I
things.
feel and perceive and am congruent with certain things.
Yeah. And to be able to do this also in partnership and relationships and all of these places, it's not just it is a you technique, but it can affect someone else in your life even more positively through the changes that you make with it
Hmm.
and opening up that energetic shift for them too. Like I love doing this with couples that are open and available to doing it, because some is just, if the therapist knows, sometimes couples is a bloodbath. But in the times when the couples are there and engaged and open,
Hmm.
their communication gets easier, their sexual relationship improves. There's just a myriad of different things that improve when they're doing it together too,
Hmm.
you know? What is your favorite part of your process doing NET? The NET process is the same, but how you apply it as Timothy. Like, what's your favorite
Mm.
part of the process?
Mm. That's a good question.
Right?
Yeah. So I think I probably love two things most. I love how NET so easily allows us to go from the present day back in time immediately to all those linked stressors, those deep beliefs,
Deep rooted memories.
those deep rooted memories,
Yeah.
all the deep rooted stuff that we might not get to in 1,000 psychotherapy sessions without NET.
Mhm.
One, because we don't know where to go. Two, because we can't always bring those things up into memory, into
Right.
mind consciously.
Correct.
But through the muscle test and through sort of the linking of the neural networks and how the muscle test can find it,
Mm-hmm.
that previous stressor, we're just right back there.
Yeah.
And I love that because
Yeah.
it's so pinpoint,
Yeah.
right? Once you've done NET, once you've used muscle
Mm-hmm.
testing to do NET, it's like, is there anything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because and there are other interventions we
Of
use for
course.
sure, but is there anything else that can just get right there and
No.
clean out this pocket of stored trauma and traumatic
Mm-hmm.
stress and that's oozing into the present
Mm-hmm.
in almost this sort of emotional infection, right?
Yeah.
We can find it, we can
Yeah.
help clear it out and clean it out.
Yeah.
The other thing I love about it is how somatic it is, right? Somebody comes in and it's like it feels like I have this weight on my chest when I walk around or when I go to bed or when I sleep or when this is like, okay, like go to your chest and you can test and it's like, what is the emotional stress leading to that? And it's again so pinpoint.
Yeah.
It's so direct.
Yeah. Being able to identify exactly, because they couldn't find the word for it.
Right.
And then when it tests, when you're going through it, they're like, that,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, as therapists, we treat anxiety
Right. Amongst many things.
amongst many things. But I mean, what is anxiety? I mean, maybe anxiety is this label we have for unnamed, unlocated, stored
Mm-hmm.
emotions.
Yeah.
But if we use NET, we can go
Mm-hmm.
start to clean out all that unnamed, stored stress that has just linked together in the brain and in the body in this web that leads
Yeah.
to this anxiety. And I also think as therapists, other practitioners use the technique, obviously, but I think as therapists, we use it the best
I
because
agree with
we have
you.
all the other skills to build around it, right?
Absolutely. And to make them feel comfortable to go to those deeper places that you couldn't do in some of those other settings.
Hmm.
And for me, one of the parts I love about it is the education that it brings, because some people don't know, right? Like, oh, muddled instability. They're like, I've never heard of that as an emotion, but that's me to a T all the time. So it allows them to identify their emotions more clearly, to then be able to regulate themselves that much more easily when they're out in the world, not
Hmm.
here in the office.
Hmm.
And to be able to have them learn more about themselves in the process. Because sometimes you know you're feeling something, but it's so hard to identify because you're in it, versus having that outside person to be the guide to help a part of the testing.
Hmm.
It's like, oh yeah, it was right there. I just couldn't see it, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah. What's another good question I should ask you?
What do you like best about it?
What do I like best about it? So many things. I love that the body's so reliable.
Mm.
Because right when you do the muscle test, there's no hidden agenda. Like, oh, I want the arm to fall at 7.
Right.
It's the body falls and responds when it responds. And half the time people are like, before they even say what that age was about, they're like, how did you know that? I'm like, it wasn't me. Your body literally tested for this. And it's the age I was molested, the age I was, all those deep traumas comes right to the brain. And they're almost like, how did you have access to that? So it shows them in real time. The body's been wanting to release this. It just hasn't had the way, hasn't had the path. So I would say one of my favorite parts of it is the release process. The diverse, how do I say? Not diverse deliveries, but the diverse experiences of people in their experience. It's like, I feel like a part of me's on fire. I feel, again, a part of me feels lighter. A part of me now I feel angry. Let's keep going with that to really open up whatever's been hidden. And there's just nothing like that to me that works that fast in real time. And it's the honor to be that person's guide when they're in that place. So just how direct, efficient.
It takes what therapy can do to a whole new level.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say most people, when they come to me, they've already been to therapy. They're looking for something alternative. They're looking for something different. And again, they were doing certain work on something for maybe 3 to 4 years in therapy. And we do it maybe in 3 months at most to like really get deep and into it. And it's a whole different relationship. So to provide that availability of work for somebody makes me feel very purposeful. I'm sure it makes you feel very purposeful too.
Absolutely.
But
yeah. I love working with clients that don't use NET. But it's a special chance to work with clients who do use NET because there's just so much more healing that normally can happen. There's just so much more that can normally be done when somebody's open to an advanced processing technique, but especially NET.
Yeah.
Because it takes the cake.
Yeah, it really it really does.
So I want to go into how we met a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
Because
Love that.
I have vivid memories of it. I don't know if you do or not, but we were in Sedona at an NET seminar.
Magical.
Magical. And it was about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was just starting my private practice, and I was fairly scared and worried about any little thing going wrong and just tanking me and derailing me. And so I meet you, and here's like this wonderful person with this strength to sort of work with me in workshop. And this went on for like an hour, right? It was more like a session.
For sure.
And you were just there, and you were a therapist at your best in the sense that you almost just sort of cradled me and like, it's going to be okay. I did this before you did, and you're going to make it, and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And it was. So you did all of those things so better than anybody I've ever known, honestly. And there was this little NET technique you were able to weave in, right? So you could help me get into that emotional place, but you could also pinpoint the stressors and the emotions and the past events that were all present, leading to this fear and trepidation and idea that I was going to ruin my life and my practice and everything all in one fell swoop. That's slightly hyperbolic, but not much, right? But you could use this too to just help me physiologically clear these things and reprocess these things. So I felt like it was the best of both worlds.
It was.
Do you
It
remember
still
that?
is.
Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. I remember it happening. I remember the long treatment time, but at the same time, like that's what's normal when we go to seminars of that kind.
Yeah.
To spend that time with somebody.
Yeah.
And I do remember you were like fresh. You were getting ready to go, and you were looking around like, how is this all gonna happen?
Yeah.
Like, how is this all gonna work out? And I'm like out here in this very surrendered state. Be like, are you kidding me?
I know.
Like,
That's how
you're
you
gonna
were.
be fantastic. And you're like, me? You talking to me? I'm like, yeah, you. But to be a part of your journey in this way, it's so beautiful to look back 2.5 years later into the now of how impactful just maybe that hour or that time was for your career for the rest of your life. I believe we're all meant to play those roles for each other, of how we really help and serve, even if we don't know how much we're doing it in the moment,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and how beautiful that is.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my honor and pleasure.
I think it also segues, right, and
Yeah.
opens up this conversation about, as therapists, just how additive this is, right? Because we don't give up any of that other important, vital,
No.
empathetic ability.
Yeah.
It just so enhances it, right? For the
I believe
client,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
So for the client who maybe has had that before, maybe they get it from us in the same or a greater way,
Right.
but then they get more if they're open to it. Then they
Absolutely.
get to start to address what's underneath,
Yeah.
what's underneath their need for empathy.
Very true. And I do think, of course, the therapeutic relationship is essential.
Mhm.
However, the therapeutic relationship with an advanced processing technique like NET is like, I don't want to make like a volcano in a bad way. In a good way, it's like a
Right.
really great harmony and mix for safety, for self-discovery, for curiosity, for understanding. But you're not guessing. It's not like you're asking someone.
Yeah.
We're getting deep to the core root of what's really been going on, whether these last many decades, these last many
Yeah.
years, however long, you know?
Right.
And so many therapists, and again, just because the world that we're in right now, what's available, so many therapists only know to treat the cognitive mental part, reframing. But imagine if you try to reframe the brain, but then the body's not in alignment with that. That's only going to take you so far. You're going to get stuck. You're going to repeat those patterns again because until the physiology is corrected, it just can't
It's
match
almost
up.
impossible just to change your thinking.
It is, I think. I
Yeah.
think, And that's why, again, like people when they do affirmations, like why don't affirmations work for me? It's like, well, if you're only doing it up here, the rest of your body's not enrolled in that. It's not corrected into that,
Right.
So to be where we sit in this place of having this, again, I don't want to just say advanced processing technique, but this ability to,
To have NET, basically.
yeah, to have, again, to be able to treat the mind and body as one, as the body was made to do. They're
Mm-hmm.
not separate.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people have it that way. I think it's still sort of being accepted and normalized in the mental health world, in the psychology world, even though there's plenty of studies, there's plenty of stuff out there, but people
Yeah,
still
and
turn a
so
turn an
many
eye to
somatic
it.
psychotherapists that are probably doing the best out of
Right,
anyone.
right. And they just don't know what they're missing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you talk about there how if the emotional reality, that frozen emotional reality in the emotional part of our brains is stuck,
hmm
then changing the cognitive so hard.
It doesn't even do anything.
Right.
It's almost like trying to stick a piece of tape to something when there's a hurricane outside. It's just going to blow off
Right.
and
It
fly
blows off.
away.
It
Yeah.
blows off very quickly.
It's not sturdy. It's not stable. It can't root into anything,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we were talking a minute ago off camera, you brought up this word alchemy.
Mm.
And I don't know if Jung was the first, but Jung talked a lot about the alchemical reaction and how that works in therapy. And you might have a more sophisticated way to say this. I think of it as we lean into all the conflicts
hmm
inside of us, we lean into the struggles of our lives. We allow all of that to be this sort of mix
hmm
and this chemical interaction figuratively inside of us that comes together and is tough, and then somehow out of that is born something beautiful, and we live life on a higher, more resolved plane.
Very nice way of
Okay,
saying
is that
that.
okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Because alchemy goes very far back.
Okay.
I don't know how far back the word alchemy goes, but the idea of alchemizing, and again, it's not like we can go in and do it.
Right.
You can't just say, like, okay, heart, we're going to alchemize these emotions now. You could
Right.
try,
Right.
maybe, but they're going to laugh in your face.
Right.
They're going to be like, have you looked at me? Like, do you know why I'm even here?
Right.
Like, have you really gotten to know what's really going on in here? So I think it's through the NET process where we can acknowledge the emotions of what's going on, acknowledge the event, connect it together of what does it make it mean about you? It's one thing for an event to happen to you, but what did it make it mean about you? Oh, are you unworthy? Are you unlovable? Are you undesired? Are you worthless? Yada, yada. And to be able to look at it clearly, then we can hit the point of surrendering into it during the processing, and the alchemy can occur just as the body was designed in its nature to be able to self-correct, to be able to self-heal.
Right.
And besides meditation, and again, in a different way, I don't know any other technique that can allow that in maybe 30 seconds, a minute, a few, depending on
Right.
how deep you need to go.
It's a really quick process to
Yeah.
process any one emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I was thinking about when you were saying that is putting the body in the position to correct itself.
Correct.
Right? We can have all these internal struggles. We can have all of this stuff going on inside, all of this stress, all of these experiences, all of these challenges, all of these blocks inside that don't fit together. And we can lean into them. And to some degree, something beautiful can be born on a more resolved plane. But it hurts so bad.
Yeah.
It's so tough.
Yeah.
Right? To do that just without any assistance. But if emotionally, cognitively, physically, somatically, we can put the body in a position to correct itself, that process happens so much quicker. Distress is resolved instead of increased.
Absolutely. And even though it may take that initial vulnerability or courage to get to that place,
Which is super tough.
But it's also amazing then you have your therapist, you have your practitioner to be that space holder and witness for you that you're not alone in it. You know, sometimes with the people that I've processed, they're going into really deep, scary stuff. It's like, again, right? Even if it's just like a tap, it's like next to the couch, so you can feel the vibration. It's like, know that I'm right here with you. Like you're not alone as you process this.
Right.
And to be able to come into a room with, your head is in a million directions and you can't even think straight, to I've been the most grounded I've felt in months.
Right.
Night and day difference.
Night and day difference. They're
Yeah.
grounded. They're present.
They're in their bodies.
Right.
Because normally
you've used that phrase before. I like that.
Yeah, because they're usually so much up here and beyond. It's like they
Right.
can't even, being here has been so uncomfortable. We help make it comfortable. And it's not even, yes, but it's the process that helps make it comfortable. Because we're not going in and doing the work. Like we are not the healer. We are the guide.
Right.
The body's the healer.
Right.
Once it's in that right place.
Right.
Which again is like, to have that innate intelligence, the body knows what to do, just needs to be directed, working with it, not against it. And sometimes when you're just sitting there with it for too long, body's like, can you stop now?
Yeah.
You're doing more harm than good at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that discussion we just had, I also wanted to go back to yesterday. And it seemed like there was just a moment, it was probably about 20 minutes in real time.
Yeah.
Where it almost seemed like we were in sacred space and I was able to help you, but like you were just in this place of intense emotion, brokenness, despair, processing.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, well, and again, with this process, sometimes you don't know where it's going to take you. You don't have control over where it's going to bring you. And when we were doing the portrayal videos and we're in that deep place, it shows up as one thing, and then the original time that it goes back to, for me, was so raw, so deep for me. When I tell you, it's like one of those hardest things I've been through in this body as me, as Ananda, in this lifetime. It's not necessarily something I've done a lot of work on yet, out of mere not able to be ready to face and integrate it all. I think we have the events that happen in our lives, but the process and the availability to actually be ready to integrate it are two different things. That's why, again, it takes with grief so long for us to grieve people, 5, 10, 15 years to be ready to integrate that person is no longer here. And so when you got me in that process yesterday, there was a moment where not necessarily, it wasn't my body resisting, because body's like, go there, free me of this. But my mind is like, oh yeah, this is getting vulnerable. This is getting real. Like, are you going to go there? But it's almost like time had already stopped. And to be able to surrender into that and to not fall back, but to allow my conscious now moment mind to have access to those deep, really intense memories, to then be able to process it and just allow it. Don't resist it. The alchemy that was happening inside of me, it was like that deep cry, release. and it goes deeper than I can even put into human language words. Like there's no diction that can express it, at least
Right.
in this moment that I'm trying to comprehend it. But to be in that space where I could almost forgive myself or offer myself this space of healing for what I'd been going through. Like I've not gotten anywhere that deep in my own work with others in so long.
Mm.
So again, we can't control where the process is going to bring us, but when it brings you to that place, even though it's vulnerable, just to embrace it because the body's saying, I'm
Right.
ready. Like I'm ready to
Right.
release this now. I know we've been harboring it.
And maybe it hasn't come up for years because it wasn't ready.
Exactly. Yeah. And for me, that was a beautiful sign just for myself, from my body of like, hey, we've experienced this really intense time and chapter of life. It's been leaning more toward over, but still was kind of lingering, to now it almost like there's a new chapter because of that one, again, maybe 2-minute breathing I was doing, moment in time. But, and even if I wanted to get out of it, you were so there with me that it was like, oh no, there is no escaping it. There is no turning around against it and being like, oh no, not that or not there, you know?
Yeah, I think we do find too, right, that those things come up when they're ready.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
sometimes people go years without processing the most sensitive stuff because with the muscle test, the body just never goes to those
Hmm.
events. And they really come up when they're ready.
Yeah.
And you were willing to go there.
Yeah. I do think there was a willingness to go there. And I do think there was a safety and an intimacy of what we had created in this room together
Mm,
in this time of doing these videos, that my body said, all right. Because again, right, if
yeah.
we're at a seminar, you're around there's just so many other
The
people,
noise and
so
the
many other
buzz.
things. Even if I'm getting treated by somebody else, it's
Yeah.
like, do I trust that person enough
Yeah.
to go where this is going to take me? So there's so many factors involved subconsciously that it takes on to allow itself to get to that really raw, deep place. But it did. And I can feel that difference deeper within me than I can, again, express. It's like trying to express wind and how to describe it. It's just,
Right.
you know,
It's hard, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least I'm not a poetess yet. I haven't learned how to describe that quite yet.
Yeah, but the experience with NET is a little bit different every time. But
Absolutely. And
it's like,
sometimes it's like, all right, that felt good. I feel lighter. I feel less charged or less triggered. And then sometimes it's like, I just went to my rock bottom that I have never revisited, never been able to revisit, that I could revisit from this present moment, go back to it, allow it to heal for what I couldn't do then, and come back more, whether healed or more
uh,
integrated with it. What word are you
well, I
going to
was just going
use?
to say the
Yeah.
rock bottom is almost now experienced when we think about it, when we experience it from a changed, revolutionized place. It's not
Mm-hmm.
what it was.
Right.
It's an experience,
Mm-hmm.
but it's an experience that we're more reconciled with.
Right. It was holding so much intensity.
So much power, so much
Yeah.
charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then it's just, like you say, integrated. Then it's just more,
Yeah. More, it's always been a part of me, but now it's not like a thing I look away from.
right. People that have experienced really traumatic things or really despairing struggles, or which is probably all of us in some way,
Absolutely.
we want to help them be able to look at that as and experience that as an event, a series of events, a series of experiences that doesn't hold power over them anymore.
Yeah. And again, just like you said, it takes everyone's healing time is different.
Right.
But I do think that eventually there comes a time where the body says, all right, we've been holding this for a long time. I'm ready to start processing it now, you
Right.
know?
The body's inherently wise.
A-
It'll go there when it's ready.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that we get the chance to honor the body this way. And again, the body talks. It's just, can we understand what it's saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? Do you have any, and again, if you're open to sharing,
Yeah.
like the moment I had yesterday, have you had any of those moments where, like, again, like your whole inside just moved in a way that, yes, was painful, but so needed or so good that, like, just rocked your world?
I was working with my NET buddy at
Mm-hmm.
home right after the first of the year. And throughout the years, decades, there have been times in my life where I just get to the point where I have this burning feeling inside where it's like, I don't feel like I can even survive this way. And I had low key one of those right at the beginning of the year, and it wasn't nearly as bad as it used to be. I've done a lot of work around that type of feeling, but it came up again, and she worked with me, and she sort of just bore into me. She's good at that. She sort of just bore into me, and it's like, okay, like let's really process this. Like let's really get this. Let's
Yeah.
really figure out why.
Yeah.
Even maybe at 40%, you still experience what you used to at 90.
Right.
And it was one of those experiences where it's a before and after moment, where before I was in it and after I was like, I feel so much freer. And the circumstance didn't change,
Right.
but how I felt about it, how I operated in it, how I looked at it and viewed it, and how I viewed myself and my life, it just was different.
Altered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just altered, and I was living life on that higher plane.
Yeah.
And that happens.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing experience to experience it, right? Because I go into an NET session feeling this way, and I walk out of it feeling differently, emotionally,
Yeah.
feeling differently in my body, different realizations, different perceptions. And that doesn't always happen in a dramatic way with every NET
Right.
session. But like what happened with you yesterday, like what happened with me in this experience, sometimes the body's just ready.
Yeah.
And the things processed are just so right.
Yeah.
And we walk out and we're living life on a higher plane, and we're just different.
Yeah. Forever changed in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've had a few of those really powerful experiences where something that just totally had power over me, once the experience was done, it was night and day, like the intrusive thoughts about it, gone. You know, like whatever that used to bother me about it, diminished by 90%. And those are just the miracles that, like, we know miracles are real.
Yeah. Sometimes it happens.
Yeah.
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 So just to wrap up, anything else you want to share, or we'll just share a few hopes for these series of videos and what it was like to work on them together, and we'll move on. But is there anything else you want to put in here near the end?
That's what I was gonna that's what I was gonna share. Anything else I want to add? I suppose just a general statement of how grateful I am to have this technique in my life, that I would not be the woman, human, servant, leader, therapist without it, and that it's only done wonders of good. So, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further hopes for this series of videos? What you hope people take from it? What you hope therapists take from it?
Oh my goodness. If you are watching this video and you are a therapist, I highly encourage you to integrate more somatic work into your practice, to go to your first basic NET seminar, wherever that it's closest to you, just to learn more about how to serve your clients in this deeper, more holistic and integrative way. And if you are a potential client watching this video, know that there is hope for whatever that you're experiencing, whether it's a dark night that you can't get out of, any kind of physical struggle, there is opportunities and availabilities for you to get better. And just that if you're watching this video, I'm grateful for you being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for participating in this with me.
Yeah.
Very grateful.
Honor and a pleasure.
Yeah.
Always fun to have playtime.
That's right.
Anything else you want to add?
Just thank Zach, who is our expert videographer.
The man behind the cam. Can't see him, but you'll catch him at an NET seminar later in life.
That's right. And your partner, so we should give him props.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And I would say much the same thing you would say, but if you're a client and you're interested in NET, go to netmindbody.com, find a practitioner. If you're a therapist and this is new to you, or you desire greater effectiveness, greater techniques, greater somatic or mind-body techniques, if you want to learn more, go to netmindbody.com, go to oneresearchfoundation.org. That's the official research arm of NET. Netmindbody.com being the official website of NET. But we just hope, I think, through these videos that NET is seen, explained, that more people have the opportunity to be exposed to it, to experience it, to use it,
To be excited about it.
So yeah, and if we can help further that, both personally through our work with people and through any other forum,
yeah,
that's what we want to do.
Yeah. So thank you all for being here and watching. And if this is the first video you're watching, feel free to go find any of the other videos that have been released with this one. Is that a wrap?
That's great. It's a wrap.